Thank you for joining me today on my channel. I appreciate you stopping by. This is going to be one of the most useful videos for you if you have equipment, if you have gear, okay? Because, we spend so much money on all this stuff, all this great gear and equipment so we can be successful and have fun and enjoy ourselves outdoors, but also so it doesn't let us down. And to make sure our gear doesn't let us down, we can't let down our gear. So this video in particular is going to be useful to maintain some of your equipment. Now, this is going to be an ongoing series for a couple of weeks. Today's video is specifically about leather care, okay? Because, especially if you have a knife, chances are you probably have a leather sheath. Now, maybe not. Maybe you have a kydex sheath or something else. But you probably have something that has leather on it if you're a traditional bushcrafter or a camp crafter, because it's a traditional material. It's really durable, it's sturdy, and it won't let us down if we don't let it down, if we take care of it. All right, so let me put away some of this stuff, and I'm going to show you how we take care of leather. Leather was usually maintained by an animal oil or animal fat. Now, we don't do that so much today. Some people still do. They're diehards out there. But it's pretty well proven that oils like neat's foot oil, which is a historical use for conditioning leather, in the long term actually starts degrading the leather. So if you're still doing that, it's your equipment and everything, but it is pretty well proven and accepted across everywhere that neat's foot oil is not an appropriate leather conditioner because it does dry out the leather in the long term and it can make it very brittle. That might have been what happened to this leather here because it's so old. Chances are that historical applications of various type of oils was used to make sure that this stays supple and usable. But this isn't so bad that it's so far gone that it can't be saved. Now, I get some requests throughout all my channel, my series and stuff, when I talk about equipment. Hey, Mr. Dyer, what do you do to repair this? Or what do you use on that? Now, this series in particular is designed to answer some of those questions. Now, I am by no means an expert, historical reconditioner or anything like that. I'm not a museum specialist. I am a teacher. And I do research online just like you do. And there's a lot of people out there who know way more than I do when it comes to equipment repair and conditioning. But, everybody can pretty much agree on some things, and I'm going to discuss those today and what I have found that works well for me and, seems to do great on my historical items after a lot of research. But again, I'm no professional. I don't do it for a living. So I would suggest if you do have a historical piece that you want to maintain, try to reach out to a museum, maybe a university, try to talk to somebody who is a curator of historical items and see what they have to say. They might have some suggestions. You might find some interesting suggestions as well. If you ever want to restore an old oil painting, well, human spit seems to be the go-to because it doesn't damage the oil paintings. So, don't be surprised if you find something that might shock you a little bit and something you can find at home, okay? So it doesn't matter if it's a newer leather sheath, leather item, or something that's 100 years old. One thing that's in common with all leather goods is they need to be cleaned. Now, there's a couple steps that you need to do to make sure your leather is cleaned appropriately. First of all, if you have a shoe brush, take your shoe brush or rag and brush it off. Get some of the thicker dirt off. Next, what's suggested is you take a little bit of water that we're going to use today, just a little bit of water, and on a cloth, and you wipe it down. That's going to get the next layer of dirt and grunginess off of it. After that, then you bring out the big guns. By big guns, I'm talking about saddle soap. Now there's lots of different brands of saddle soap out there. This is just your traditional big box store Kiwi brand saddle soap, and it works just as well as some more expensive things. So I'm going to pour a little bit of water in here. There we go. I'm going to get a rag and we'll get to wiping. Make a couple rags, okay? Now again, this is the first step. We're just going to dampen it with some water. I've already brushed these off. Wring it out, and we're going to wipe it down. Try to get rid of anything that seems kind of big sticking out. Now these were in storage, I have no idea how long. And there is just a little bit of that weird gray, I don't know if it's mold that's kind of laying on top. It's just surface. It hasn't damaged the leather really at this point. But we are going to wipe that off, make sure it's clean. Now the brittle bits, you want to be really careful. You don't want to be too aggressive with it, especially if they haven't been conditioned in a long time. So we're just going to do dabs, not going to aggressively try to scrub any of it off. The belts tend to be the most tender when it comes to this. And you can feel by touch just how dry or how conditioned leather is. If it's starting to feel like a tortilla chip or something, then you know it's pretty dry. But nonetheless, when it comes to these belts, take your time and be gentle with it. Because you'd be surprised at what level of dried out leather you can bring back if you condition it appropriately. You could save a piece. This is the one that has the most gray that we see here. And just from there, you can see if me taking this rag, wiping it off, takes it right off. You know, there's nothing aggressive about this really. Just getting in there and wiping it off. Okay, I'm going to finish this up on this one, and then we're going to dry it off with the other rag, and then we're going to go to the soap. Now that we've wiped down both of the leggings and the sheath with a little bit of dampness, we want to take our new rag. This is a clean rag. We got our saddle soap opened up, and you're going to just load up the rag with some soap. And then you just go ahead and wipe it. And leather has a grain to it, very much like wood. So if you can find the grain in the leather when it comes to using the soap, it helps out a lot. But if you can't, then it's fine. Just do some circles and it'll be just fine. So let's go ahead and put the soap on, and I'll bring you back for the next step. If you liked the video so far, please go ahead and click like. That way other people find it and it helps them out. We really appreciate it. Thank you. Now you may be wondering, do you need to wash and clean the inside? The answer is yes. Now you do have to be a little bit careful with the rough side on the inside or the suede, because it's going to absorb a lot more moisture than the smooth side. Okay, so make sure, especially when you have your rag, that you wring it out. That way you don't get it too wet, because you want to be able to move this along pretty quickly. You want your leather to be completely dry in between each step, or as dry as possible for the next step. Because if the leather is loaded up with water, which is expanding the fibers, then it's not going to accept the conditioner as well if it was dry. Okay, so if it's something like this, which has been fairly warm smooth, you don't have so much to worry about. But if it's brand new leather and it's pretty rough, that's going to absorb a lot more moisture. So using a brush especially is going to be very beneficial to get any dirt and crud that might be in there. Now that we've cleaned our leather, we've brushed it off, we washed it off, and we even used some saddle soap to clean off anything else that might be on there, especially like tough residues. Now's the next step, and that's the conditioning aspect of it. Now, I find the conditioning aspect pretty therapeutic, especially when I'm either watching TV or I'm outside, you know, around a campfire, or just watching the sun go down. It's a lot of fun to me, you know, I enjoy it. But the conditioning aspect of it is kind of a personal choice. There's lots of different solutions out there. There's two solutions that I use. The first one And I don't really hear it talked about a whole lot. It's called leather honey. Leather honey. Now, I found this works really well to rejuvenate old, dried out leather. It's a pretty decent conditioner too. I don't think it's as durable as the next one though. But leather honey, if you're trying to rejuvenate old, brittle leather, dried out leather, something that's been neglected for a really long time, then repeated treatments of this seems to work really well to bring it back. The next one that I like is Aussie Leather Conditioner. And I honestly don't remember where I got this from. It's Phoebe's. I don't remember if I got it from a big box store or if I got it from a specialty shop or whatever. But it works really well. I like how it doesn't necessarily make the leather supple. You know, it's not like a baseball glove conditioner, which some people use. But this does a really good job, I think, of protecting the leather once it's been cleaned. So this is what I use for that. So for these things, like things that have been treated, they're not dried out, and they're maintained, the Aussie Leather Conditioner does a really good job. But for today, on this particular piece and this particular piece, what I'm going to use is the leather honey. Okay, because the leather honey, like I said, does a really good job of bringing back dried out leather. So we need to get a rag, set these off to the side. Now this stuff, a little bit does go a long way. It comes off really, really clear. And it is kind of sticky like honey. And then you take your cloth, you just rub it in. It really does feel like you're putting honey on the leather. And I do this in circles all the way down. So I'm trying to work it in to the leather pores. And the more friction you add, then that heat builds up and the pores open up in the leather, but it also makes the honey a little bit more easy to spread. So friction is a good thing when it gets to this. Once it's all done though, like you won't have this sticky residue. Now, your last treatment, there might be a really, really thin layer of sticky residue. That means that the leather soaked up the honey really well. At that point, you can just take a spare rag and wipe off any excess. We're going to go all the way down. Now, we have to be careful not to be aggressive when it gets to the leather straps. This area where it's a thicker leather, it's more durable leather, it's not a problem being aggressive with it. But this part's also not as dried out as those thinner pieces. But when we start talking about this part, right here, this is where we need to be very careful. Now we're getting to the brittle areas. So here, especially the first treatments or two, we're going to be kind of gentle. Steal some from the other one, just to make sure we got plenty on there. Now that we've got these leggings done, let's go ahead and put these to the side, let them dry out a little bit, and make sure that we check on them in about an hour, and it'd probably be enough time to actually put another coat on because these are pretty dried out. Now when it comes to your leather sheets, it's really good, 2 or 3 times a year, because these things get used a lot, they get abused a lot, to go ahead and try to treat them. But at the very, very least, at least once a year, you want to make sure to take the time and really take care of your leather sheets. So for this one, we're going to use the Aussie Leather Conditioner. I really like this stuff. It kind of looks like petroleum jelly a little bit. So for this, we got another rag. We want to take a little dab of it. Honestly, you don't need a whole lot. And then again, we're just going to rub into it. And because of the heat, the friction that you're going for to try to open up these pores and everything, that's another good reason to just do this while you're watching TV or something. That way you give it the due attention. It's not something that you really want to rush through. Now, if you're just reapplying it through a season, that's one thing. But if you're doing a storage, if you're going to put this away for the year, or it's going to be a while since you use it next, Or if this is your one big time where you take all your equipment and you tend to it really, really well, then make sure to spend the time and do it right. So what you're going to see me on this video is going to be really quick, because I'm essentially just showing you how to do it. But I like to do little circles, big circles, and I like to go with the grain if at all possible. Sometimes you can't. Sometimes, especially in the small areas, you can't really do with the grain, but this area here on these type of sheaths where they creased because of belt use, that's a really important spot to make sure it's not cracking. Double check it. Take the time, because you don't want to lose a knife from your sheath slipping off or breaking off. These are points of failure that you're looking for. Another point of failure that tends to happen with sheaths is the stitching. Because oftentimes, especially if you're jamming your knife in, now this sheath you don't have to worry about it because it has a guard that makes sure it doesn't go too deep. But a lot of pocket sheaths, like this one here, if you're sticking your knife in there and or maybe something hits it really hard, sometimes the knife will actually break through the little strip of leather that is supposed to guard it from catching into the stitching. Sometimes that's just not avoided. So make sure to check your stitching, make sure to check your rivets, make sure they're not rusted out or getting too funky. Like this one here, as you can see, the pocket sheath here, I do have a middle section of leather that's just all the way around to prevent, again, to block that blade from hitting the stitching. But due to neglect, I can see I popped a couple stitches, so I have to go through there and I have to re-stitch that and double check it. Some people, they'll actually rivet as well as a double protection, so just in case your knife does get jammed in there, a rivet kind of helps with that. This sheath is based off of the one that Horace Kephart had for his, so try to keep it traditional, and I don't mind stitching leather, so it's not a big deal. I'll go through, add some more stitching. And if you haven't seen my video on the Horace Kephart knife, make sure to check that out after you watch this one. I try to break it down on what really makes it unique. And I think in October is when I'm going to start the video series trying to discuss Horace Kephart's tools. And we're going to break down how they were used, not just the knife, but even his axe and his pocket knife. What were the general uses for those different tools? Because a lot of people, they tend to take their sheath knife and it's a do-all, which is fine. You can get away with it. But every tool has its own precise use. Some things are just better than others. So we take that idea into account, and why Horace Kephart chose the tools that he did. At least why I think he chose the tools that he did. Make sure to get the edge there. The edges is going to soak up more of the conditioner than anywhere else, because they're raw edges. Even burnished edges will still have areas that don't soak up the leather like the rest. So you want to make sure to get that in there. And the more friction that you add to it, the better. Now they do make suede conditioner as well. This type of conditioner is specifically designed for the smooth side of it. So if you want to condition the rough, get the rough leather conditioner. It's just not as thick. It tends to be a little bit more fluid-like in general. So once you have your leather conditioned, take the other end or take a different rag, basically a dry side, and run that over it to get any of the excess off, so you don't got a slimy leather pouch or slimy leather sheath or something. Dry that off. Now, look at that. You're ready to go. This knife can go back to its home, like so. Same thing for this one. There you have it. So this is how I treat my leather and condition it and get it ready for the next season, or just touch it up and do some little repairs if needed. Now, if you're interested in any of these products, please check out my affiliate links below. I get a small percentage, from any of the sales. It helps this channel, it pushes us forward a little bit, and we really appreciate it. And if you're interested in pre-ordering my cookbook, which comes out October 31st, then send me an email, which is also in the description box below. It's also in this little black box. Let me know that you're interested, and I'll send you all the details to it. It's going to cost $20 to pre-order, and you get extra benefits. After it's released, it's going to cost $25. So again, that's my effort in trying to keep pushing this channel forward and help things move along. If you've liked this video, please click like. That way other people find it. It helps them out, and we really appreciate it. It helps the channel out as well. If you haven't subscribed yet, please click subscribe, and don't forget to hit the notification button, because next week I'm going to show you how to take care of another piece of camping equipment so it doesn't fail you, and you never ever want to fail your camping equipment, right? If you're interested in the Horace Kephart knife, then click the video over here. And if you're interested in the puttees, or the leather leggings is what they really are, then click this video right over here. I hope you guys have a wonderful week. Give a kiss and hug to your loved ones, and I'll see you guys next time. Take care.